The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is worsening. The World Health Organization says it has run out of critical supplies to treat a surge in Guillain-Barré Syndrome, a rare paralysis-causing condition linked to poor sanitation and infections. Since June, 94 cases have been recorded in Gaza, with 10 deaths, including 4 children. WHO says life-saving treatments like immune globulin are at zero stock.
Thank you very much. On the Guillain-Barré Syndrome, the latest figures.
There's an explanation as to why we see.
On the Guillain-Barré Syndrome, the latest figures are now since June and now, so during June and until I think even 27 August, 94 suspected GBS cases, Guillain-Barré Syndrome, were reported across the Gaza Strip. This increase is partly also now due to increased surveillance. After the first cases appeared, surveillance was increased, especially by the Ministry of Health, with support of WHO and the partners. GBS is a so-called There's the first line of treatment for Guillain-Barré, which is called an intravenous immune globulin or a plasma exchange. But these two are at zero stock, as are anti-inflammatories, and therefore these deliveries must be urgently expedited as much as surveillance and testing capabilities. Given especially the wash situation, the water sanitation and health situation, specifically the sanitary situation, this of course the conditions are ripe for any infections, especially of the respiratory or the gastro tract. So the collapse of the wash infrastructure, the overcrowding in the shelters, the movement of people, the lack of medicines to treat, the lack also of surveillance mechanisms, the lack of detection or lab facilities. This all leads to this. The problem with GBS is that the symptoms like paralysis, which can affect anybody, so throughout lifehood, and very severe paralysis in the severe cases, is very similar. So these symptoms are similar to polio. While polio mainly occurs in the early childhood, and GBS throughout lifehood, that's the big difference, but the symptoms are very similar. But with lack of testing capability and restricted access and no medicines and no treatment, that is the huge challenge. Given especially the wash situation, the water sanitation.
Meanwhile, Palestinians continue to bury victims of Israeli strikes. 6 members of one family were killed while sheltering in a tent in Gaza City. Israel has begun what it calls preliminary operations to seize the city, despite warnings of mass casualties. According to Gaza's health ministry, the death toll since October 7 has surpassed 62,900 people, most of them civilians, while famine and malnutrition have claimed at least 317 lives, including 121 children. In Khan Yunis, Israeli strike on Nasser hospital killed at least 22 people, including medical staff and journalists.
هنموت وغاد موت كل حياة نموت أصلا سواء هنا ولا في الجنوب كل موت.
المنطقة كلها صارت خطر والناس طلعت، وأنا بدي أطلع بس مش عارف وين أروح، مش ملاقي مكان، فبطلع أغراضي شوية شوية قاعد بوديهم عند ناس، هذول شوية على الناس، سمع الطخ كيف؟ أودي أغراض هان على الناس، أغراض هان على الناس، مرات ولادي يستنوني بالشارع، وين أوديهم أنا مش عارف لحد الآن، على الجنوب، مش على الجنوب، مش مكان أروحه، ما عنديش خيمة، خيمتي محجوزة بالشجاعية تحت الردم وما عرفتش أطلعها. بدي اتنقل من مكان لمكان في غزة عامل ما ربنا يفرجها، اشوف خيمة، اشوف مكان، اشوف حاجة، مش عارف وين بدي اروح بالضبط، ومش عارف اخذ قرار، مخي مش عارف ياخذ قرار بالمرة من كتر النزوح اللي احنا فيه.
Outside Gaza, a massive flotilla of boats carrying aid, the largest since the blockade began, is preparing to set sail for Gaza, with Swedish activist Greta Thunberg among those on board. Organizers are urging governments to pressure Israel to allow safe passage.
We bring more than 44 countries came together from global south to global north. In one movement, in one space, we have tens of ships, hundreds of participants who are going to be on board of those ships, and hundreds of people who are organizing the process. And we agreed to give it the name of Global Sumud Flotilla. Global because it represents the globe, because 5 continents are participating. Sumud, resilience, which is inspired by the resilience of the Palestinian people. We are doing this with the conscience that whatever the risks we are facing, it's nothing compared to the risks that Palestinians have been facing for the past 22 months, and they are still facing until today. The Israeli government is a genocidal government that has absolutely no respect for international law, has no respect for human rights, and has no respect for conventions. Everything is possible unless governments and countries decide to stop their complicity, and they act. They act to defend the human rights, and they act to guarantee a safe passage for this flotilla that is composed of civilians who are carrying a humanitarian aid and going to try in a non-violent way to bring food and medicine into Gaza and to break the siege on Gaza. So this is a responsibility of the politicians.
We are sending food, we are sending food items, we are sending baby supplies, medicines, and we are in contact with the people inside of the Gaza Strip to make sure that what we send is what is most needed inside of the Gaza Strip. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that this is not a mission to send food and aid inside of the Gaza Strip. It is a mission to break the barriers and to pressure governments into letting the aid that is already at the borders to enter into the Gaza Strip. We can only say that in the sense of the number of boats, this is going to be the biggest ever in the humanitarian world and in the history of the humanitarian work. And also in the number of participants, of countries, of people supporting, of people working on the ropes. That's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, that is going to happen. And we know that there is a bigger risk of all these people being deported, and even the risk of Mavi Marmara happening all over again. But this is something we have to face. I think as a humanitarian activist, you put hope in the smallest sliver of light, and we see that light at the end of the tunnel. We see the hope in the faces of the Gazans.
Ilan Weiss, taken from Kibbutz Be'eri, during the October 7 attacks. With his death confirmed, Israel says 49 hostages remain in Gaza, of whom only 20 are believed alive. In Europe, Norway's $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund is under US pressure after divesting from Caterpillar over the company's supply of bulldozers used in Gaza and the West Bank. US Senator Lindsey Graham has threatened tariffs on Norway in response. Oslo insists the decision was independent, made by the fund's Ethics Council. From humanitarian shortages in Gaza to diplomatic contentions abroad, the war continues to send ripples far beyond the region.
Krigen på Gazastripen en alvorlig humanitær. Forvalterne i snitt investert i ca. 1/3 av selskapene. Men det en helhetlig vurdering som tar inn over seg alle disse tingene, inkludert omdømmerisiko og menneskerettigheter.
After security in the north, in the Arctic, a lot of confidence between our services.
Additionally, we talked about successful, and I think he could speak for